I'm doing the Time and Place book tag, which was created by Jen Campbell, who is an amazing booktuber. She's so cool, and she's also an author, so you should so go and subscribe to her. You pick out 10 books from your shelves that you associate with a specific time or place that you read them. So whenever you see them, you think of a specific time or place in your life when you read that book. So where you were when you were reading it, what you felt, what was going on. And as soon as I watched her video, literally like all these ideas popped into my head of ones that I could do and talk about, and I don't think I've been tagged, but I just wanted to do it anyway because I felt inspired, I guess. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, let's get to the books. The first one is going to be a bit cliched, but I just couldn't do this video and not mention it. Harry Potter. The reason obviously, because this series was so impactful on my life, you may know if you watched my Harry Potter book tag, which if you haven't, you should go do that. Yeah, one, because it was so impactful, and also because I was quite young, so it's one of my earliest memories, and my dad used to always read to me when I was younger, but because I was about 4 or 5 when my dad read this to me. I'd gone to look for like a picture book that he could read to me before bedtime, and I couldn't find one. We'd read all of them, and this is a book that I'd had it for a while, and it was given to me just by like a family friend, and I just kind of assumed it was too old for me, and I just kind of left it on my shelf, hadn't really cared about it that much. And because I had nothing else to read, I was like, okay, I'll just pick this, whatever this is. And I took it through to my dad, and I was like, can we just read this, because I don't think there's anything else. And we started it that night, and we got absolutely hooked, like the both of us, we got hooked. And that was basically history. I mean, that was it. I was hook, line and sinker. I was done. I was like, yes, this series. And every time a new book came out, we had a tradition that my dad would always read it to me, and it was just, yeah, it started a wonderful journey. So yeah, this is obviously will evoke all these memories whenever I see it on my shelf, and yeah, so that's that. The next book that I strongly associate with a time and a place is The Maze Runner, because I read this on a train from London to Glasgow. If you guys don't know, I grew up in Glasgow. I lived there for about 8 to 9 years of my life. I've moved around a lot, but so I was just going there, you know, to visit some family, do some work experience with some people that I knew, and obviously long train journey, like 4 hours. I had to take some books, and The Maze Runner was one of them, and it was the first time I'd obviously it was the first time I'd read The Maze Runner, and I just remember reading it and seeing, like, going past on the train, like all these like trees and forests, and I just would imagine like running through them, you know, with like Thomas and Newt, and I don't know. Yeah, it's weird, I know, but I just, yeah, I strongly associate that with like all the nature that I saw like outside the train window. Also, there's like physical evidence, because I had like a tub of pineapples, and not of like pineapples, but pineapple chunks that I had for lunch, and then when I got off the train, I put the pineapples and the tub in the bag, and juice spilled on it, and so it's like, I don't know if you can see, but it's like partially like stained. So I always remember that train journey when I see this book. The next book that I strongly associate with a time and a place is Northern Lights by Philip Pullman, and yeah, I remember I was also very young. My mum actually read this series before me, and she genuinely like loved it. She kind of like thrust it on me, I remember, and I was lying in bed one night, and I remember I was really hot, and my mum started to read this to me, and a lot of it went over my head, and I was like, oh, what is this? This is so confusing, no. And then so I think she had to read it to me again, and I cannot read the opening lines of this book without like picturing myself just in bed, like listening to my mum, because like I think literally every time I hear, yeah, like Lyra and her demon move through the darkening hall, and I remember it being nighttime and my mum was reading it to me, and when I like started to concentrate, because I realised obviously the first time mum had read it to me it was quite complicated, so I was actually actively trying to concentrate on it, and I just conjured up this image, and that's always what I think of when I see this on my shelf. So yeah, and obviously I went on to reread this and read the other 2 books in the series and absolutely loved it, so that will always stay with me. The next book is All the Bright Places. not only because it's one of my favourite books, but I went to a Waterstones book event with David Levithan, Jennifer Niven and Sally Green, and actually I didn't know who Jennifer Niven was when I went to it. I just went for David Levithan and Sally Green, and then I heard her talking about this book, this one that she'd written, and I just kind of fell in love with the plot. So I was like, wow, I have to buy that, and I did, and I got it signed, and I read it that night and part of the next day. Like, honestly, like, I just, so many feelings about this book. And I just will so clearly remember just coming back from that signing and sitting down and reading it and just being completely blown away by the writing, the story, the characters. It's just a beautiful book, and you should read it if you haven't already. The next book is Vampire Academy. And I associate this with being ill because I remember I had this ear infection thing, and I mean because it was an ear infection, and you know, you have liquid in your ear, so you're meant to like be off balance and stuff, so I wasn't supposed to read because that was meant to like give me balance issues. I don't know, I just wasn't supposed to read or watch TV or anything, so I literally just had to sit there, and I sat there for a day, and then I just said to my mum like the next day, because it takes about a week or so to go, like it varies or something. I said, Mum, look, I cannot read, please just get me a book. And so I ordered Vampire Academy. I remember just reading this in like one sitting because obviously I was ill, so I just sat there and I read it. And I just got hooked, and I just ordered like the rest of the series, and then my mum got really angry at me because it's like 5 books after, there's 5 books after this one, and she's like, you're not supposed to read and you got 5 books. And I just read, like, just marathon like the whole series in this like week and a half that I was ill and I wasn't supposed to read. But what are you gonna do? I mean, I wasn't gonna sit there, okay, like, no. The next few books are all John Green, so woo for being original. But yeah, anyway, that was just a little warning. So the first John Green book that I associate with the time and a place is The Fault in Our Stars, but not this edition, but it's sandwiched between quite a few books up there, and this was the more easily accessible. This is the Project for Awesome edition, but the one that I read the first time, I read it at sports day at my school. I wasn't intending to, I didn't actually know the ending. When I read it, it was quite, I didn't know that there was so much hype around it. I just was recommended to me by a friend of my mum's because she just read it on a whim or something. So I honestly did not know what was coming. I really didn't. And I was just reading it on sports day because obviously it's sports day. I wasn't doing any sport because ew. So I was just sat there reading and I was weeping, and all of my friends were like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, guys, this book is so sad. And yeah, and you know, my friends, we at sports day at my school, we kind of all sit in a circle and then you just get up to like do your event, and I had no events because, you know, lazy and whatnot. So I literally just sat there crying like the whole day reading it, and I just remember people like going in and out being like, you okay? And I was like, but yeah, I always think of that when I look at The Fault in Our Stars. Yeah, and similarly, I'm not counting it as a separate book because it's literally the same book, but this edition of The Fault in Our Stars I associate with the Paper Towns Q&A, because I got this free at the Paper Towns Q&A, and that was just like an amazing day because I met John Green. I mean, wow. And then I also met Dan and Phil, and I saw 20 minutes of the movie of Paper Towns, not of this because obviously this came out like a year ago, and it was an amazing day, and I still can't believe that it actually happened, even though it happened like 2 weeks ago. I'm still in shock that I met John Green and I saw Paper Town, like some of Paper Towns, and I saw Nat Wolff and Cara Delevingne in person, and it was so cool. And I'm just like, this sort of thing doesn't happen to me. And also because it was just me and my friend, because there were just 2 of us, we kind of sat like as close to the front as we could, but we didn't realise that we were kind of sat in like a reserved section, but the seats that we sat in weren't reserved. But then when the event started, we were sitting next to John Green's wife and also the director of Paper Towns, like that was on the same row, and we were just like, we are not famous enough to be here. But yeah, it was such a cool day, and so then whenever I see this on my shelf, because I got this free at the event, they were just kind of there handing them out, and I was like, okay, I'll take it. I just, whenever I see this, I associate with that day, and yeah. The next book is Paper Towns, which I do obviously associate with the Paper Towns Q&A again because I got it signed, but also because I remember when I actually read this, because that's what this tag is about, getting back on track, don't worry, when I read this, I was supposed to be, well, I was revising for my biology GCSE, and I just remember like reading this in between bits of my biology textbook. I'd read my textbook for like 15 minutes, and I'd read this for like 45 minutes, and then I'd read the text. It kind of just alternated for like a day, because my mum was like, you need to revise, and I was like, okay, I will. And then I also was like reading, and she's like, Anna, you're supposed to be revising, and I was like, I am. I'm just doing it in sections. But yeah, so I read this in like a day, in conjunction with my biology textbook. So whenever I see this, I think of, oh yeah, cell membranes. Yeah, because that was also swirling around in my head as I was reading this. The next book is Allison Tom Roland, and I remember I just picked this up, and I was on a school trip, and we were on the coach, and I was reading this, and I usually get sick when I read on coaches, but this has not a lot of text. It's literally just like a picture. I don't know if you can see, yeah, like a picture and like small paragraphs. So I thought I'll be fine, I can just read this on the coach, it's not a big deal. And I just remember laughing like so much that I would like pass it to my friend like every single time that I was sat next to on the coach. Like I would just read like a page, it would take me like a minute, and then I'd be like, you need to see this, it's so funny. So I just remember like this coach journey, we're like passing this book back and forward, because it was just so funny. And yeah, and also because it's quite short, it's filled with drawings and like little paragraphs. I finished it in that coach journey, but that's what I think of when I see this, and it's quite a fun memory, because it's just me and my friend being like, oh, it's so fun, oh. But yeah, I mean, not actually like that, because that was really weird and disturbing, but you know. The next book is Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare, and you may notice that it's very icky and it's very like mangled. I don't know if you can see, but it's kind of frayed and kind of damaged, and that is because I took it to Summer in the City 2014, and if you were at Summer in the City 2014, you will know that it rained like hell on the Sunday. I mean, the heavens opened, I swear, and we were queuing. I'd been there for like 3 hours, so I obviously had to take a book, and literally in like the last hour before it opened, poured, and I had like a fabric canvas bag, and this just got soaked. Like it was soggy. I couldn't actually open it because I was scared I was gonna rip the pages. It was that soggy. And then I got home, and I like put it on the radio, I like smushed it between like the heaviest books that I own, but it's still quite mangled. But I was gonna replace it, but then I didn't want to, because that's what I think of when I see this now. I think, oh, I took that book to Summer City and I got drenched, and yeah, that's kind of the story behind this one. And I mean, it wasn't humorous at the time, but now looking back, it's quite a humorous experience, I guess, because we were all kind of huddled up waiting outside Alexandra Palace, like umbrellas blowing everywhere, and then we got in and everyone was dripping and shivering, and everyone like bought new t-shirts from the merch stand, and I just remember sitting with my friend, we're like I'm going into the bathrooms trying to like dry our hair on the hand dryers, and I just yeah, now it's funny, then it wasn't, but that's what I associate with this book. The penultimate book that I associate with the time and place is Dark, the 6th book in the Septimus Heap series by Angie Sage. I adore this series. I think more people need to read this series. It's so good. It honestly, like, if you're looking for a series to fill a Harry Potter shaped void, or just like if you finish a series, there's always kind of that, oh, like what next? But if you're ever looking for a good series, like a kind of fantasy magic series with great characters and really good writing. And I remember I went to stay with my gran, and yeah, I just remember, I think one night, it was kind of like the first time I think I'd gone to stay at my gran's on my own. Yeah, so then I took this massive book, because I was like, oh, if there's like any, like, if I don't know what to do, I can just read, and I took loads of books with me, and I was really scared of being there. I don't know why. I think my gran's a lovely person, by the way. She's not a scary lady, but I get quite anxious sometimes when I had to go away from home and stuff when I was younger. And then I remember the first night I was there, I was quite scared of the dark as well, so I just had the light on, and I just read this all through the night, like in one sitting. And obviously I would crash the next day, I was so tired, but the first night I was there to kind of calm my nerves. I remember reading this all the way through the night, and it just being amazing and so good, and actually really did calm me down, and it was kind of, I really enjoyed the rest of that trip, so I just associate this with that. And yeah, The last book I'm going to talk about for this tag is Through the Woods by Emily Carroll, and this was gifted to me by my friend B, who is in one of my videos. If you look back, you'll find, I think we did the Rip It and Ship It book tag together. But she gave this to me on Christmas Day. She came around to my house on Christmas and we exchanged gifts, and she gave me this, Through the Woods, which is a series of kind of fairy tale retellings that are quite dark and beautifully illustrated, and they're really, really good. I loved it. And so Christmas night, Christmas Eve, no, not Christmas Eve, the evening of Christmas Day, around like 11 when I went to bed, I picked this up because I wanted to read a book that I'd got that day for Christmas, and I remember reading this, and I finished the first story and a massive storm happened outside. I remember it, and I remember because the wind was howling and I could hear the rain, and it was so atmospheric because this book is kind of set like, you know, it's called Through the Woods because the forest is like, you know, a major part of each story, and I could hear the trees like moving. It was such a weird experience because I felt like I was in the book. It was so cool though. I would always like, it's so vivid in my head. I remember like the whooshing, and then I was reading about like, you know, people escaping from, you know, dark castles, you know, through the trees and stuff. And I just remember feeling part of this book. It was such like, it was almost like, I don't know, it was like reading in 3D. That was kind of, that's how I can best describe it, but it was so cool, and I'll always remember it. I think it was really, really awesome, and I finished it that night because I was just like, I have to read it while the storm's on. This is so cool. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly did, because I got to reminisce about reading all these books and all the things I associate with them. And if you want to do this tag, I tag you. Go do it, have fun. But if you don't want to, you know, make a video of yourself in case you're scared of embarrassing yourself, which I do clearly every week on here, you can just leave it in the comments, or yeah, well, whatever you want to do is fine. So I'll see you in another video soon, and yeah, bye, have a good week, life. I don't know how long it's going to be till I upload next, so just have a good time until then, I guess.